Hey guys, how are you doing? So today's class is going to be a really fun one. It might be a little bit more abstract or next level than some of the other classes in this course. And it may also be a little bit indulgent for me because this is like one of my favorite topics. And it's something that I've been interested in for a really long time, which is gamification. And gamification, it's been around for probably the last sort of 15 years, or at least the name has been coined for about the last 15 years. But I think it's only now that it's really starting to come into its own in marketing and in product development. And I think it can be a really powerful tool that involves a lot of psychology, and it's just incredibly powerful for marketing because it draws people to your products, it draws people to your brand, and it keeps them engaged and excited about what you're doing. So today we're going to be talking about gamification, and kind of on the back of that, we're also going to talk about alternate reality, creating culture, and world building. So I think this is going to be a really fun class as you build your brand. Don't worry too much about sort of like following along and saying, okay, exactly how do I implement this? How do I implement this? I think if you just watch and kind of enjoy the concepts, you'll be able to start seeing ways to implement gamification. It's not something that's linear, like, okay, just go and stick badges on your website and give people badges every time they click on something. I mean, you can do that, but I think you can use gamification or elements of gamification in a really interesting way. So first question, what is gamification? Well, I got this definition from a website called Bunchball, and you can see there's a URL there. So if you want to go and check it out, there's a lot of information on that site. But they say gamification is the process of taking something that already exists. So your website, an app if you have one, an online community, which hopefully you are building with Facebook, and then you integrate game mechanics into that thing, into the community, into your website, into your marketing, into your products, into your signature program, and it motivates participation, engagement, and loyalty. So then it goes on to say gamification takes the data-driven techniques that game designers use to engage players. So by data-driven, they mean what is motivating people, what keeps people coming back, what keeps them clicking on your website, on your products, on your brand, like what keeps drawing them back. And this is a big problem with marketing, with having a brand. Like, it's okay to get one sale, it's okay to sort of get one person to buy your products, but you need to be sustainable, you need to keep people coming back to you. And that's really what gamification is all about. And so it says it takes data-driven techniques that game designers use to engage players and applies them to non-game experiences to motivate actions that add value to your business. So basically what that is saying, it takes a process, it takes something like a product, marketing, something that is not a game, and it adds game elements to it. It makes it fun, it makes it engaging, it makes it something that people want to connect with and interact with. So let's elaborate on that a little bit more. Why gamification? Okay, so the first thing, gamification uses psychology to make interacting with your brand or product an addictive experience. And hopefully I mean that in a good way, that people will want to keep coming back to you, they'll want to keep interacting with you. Gamification can also contribute to your unique intellectual property. So this is really important. A lot of what we are doing in this course is about putting together intellectual property. Your brand, your signature program, the challenges you run, your Facebook group, all of these are part of your intellectual property. It's something you own, it's something that's valuable, and adding gamification can make your intellectual property even more unique. You're adding game mechanics, images, text, all of those things will help whatever you're doing, whether you're running like a weight loss program, whether you're selling cookies, like whatever you're doing, adding gamification can make it more unique, more special, and more part of your brand. Now, this is the important one. Gamification gets results, and it's being listed increasingly by marketers who are saying, yes, we've found that adding game elements to our site, means that people spend more time interacting with our brand. They return more often, so they visit the website, or they visit you at trade shows, or they click on your app. They come back and they have increased brand loyalty because they interact with you. They see your brand as a friend, as part of their routine. Like, you know how when you get addicted to a game, if you play casual gaming like Farmville or Words with Friends, you know how it becomes sort of part of your day. And the cool thing is, if you add gamification to your brand, you can become part of your customer's day. So it's very, very powerful. I got some really good stats here that were from a study that was done about e-learning. So it was done with universities, institutes, and online learning. And the study, these are some of the results from it. They said that almost 80% of the learners they surveyed said that they would be more productive if their university or their work was more game-like. So think about that. People don't like doing things that feel like work. They don't like doing things that feel like sort of hassle or a chore. But people like things that feel like a game. What is that? What are the elements that are drawing people to a game? What is it that drives us to compete or to try and get achievements, to try and get rewards or badges? Like, think about it. Even when you're in the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, you get badges when you do something cool. Like, we are kind of conditioned to look for rewards, look for points, look for ways to compete. Especially in a very capitalist society, it's very reward driven. Like, we really look for sort of ways to validate ourselves. So people want to play games. People will do stuff if it feels like a game. They won't do stuff if it feels like work. Second point, over 60% of learners say they would be motivated by leaderboards and increased competition between students. So that's a really interesting one. And note that it's not unanimous. So 40% of people don't agree with that. They probably don't want competition. But a lot of people are motivated by leaderboards. Think about when you're in video arcades and you see the high score charts. Remember that as a kid, you always wanted to be on the score chart so you could put your initials in. Adults are still motivated. They still want to be in the top 10. They still want to be in the top 5. Who want to be number 1. It's a very motivational tool to have this. And then the third point here, 89% of learners that they surveyed said they would be more engaged with an e-learning application if it had a point system. And one thing I notice is that more places like Udemy tend to put progress bars and have tick marks or check marks when you've finished a particular module. So people really like that sense of completion. I guess it's completion and achievement. Like, oh, I did this module, this module, this module. Good. Look at all I've accomplished today. So we kind of like that visual representation of our work, whether it's a point system or whatever else it is. And one thing I saw that was really, really interesting with Udemy is that one guy was actually offering prizes to people who finished his Udemy course, which is genius because Udemy rewards teachers who have students that complete all their courses. It means that you're more likely to be seen by Udemy as having a great quality course when people finish it. And this one guy I saw, he was like gamifying his course and saying, yeah, if you get 100% completion, I'll enter you in the prize draw. Genius. Okay, so let's take a case study quickly. And this study comes from Autodesk. And Autodesk is a software company, and they put together design software that makes 3D graphics. And it's quite complicated software to use. But what they did, which was really, really clever, was they gamified their trial of the software. So when you sign up for a trial of the software, it also has a game, and the game gives you missions, it has a leaderboard, it has all these ways of interacting. You have a profile on there, and what they're doing is challenging you to try different elements of the software, get good at using them, and basically invest in the software before the trial expires, which is absolutely genius. So the results were really, really good. What they found was after they implemented this game, and they called it Undiscovered Territory, but once they added this to the software trial process, they found they had a 54% increase in trial usage. So more people were hearing about it and saying, oh, I want to try this out. I want to play the game. So the game itself was drawing people in to try the software. It also increased a 15% increase in buy clicks. So that's amazing. 15% more people were buying the software after playing through the trial. And then 29%, now this sounds a bit confusing, 29% increase in channel revenue per trial start. What this means is that each person that tried the software actually spent 29% more with the company. So that means either they upgraded to a more expensive version of the suite than usual, or they bought more licenses, perhaps for other people in their company or their family. Huge increase in sales, trials, and just bringing people to their software. So very, very powerful. It explains a little bit more what they did down here. It said they advertised the game with the trial software, so people knew that there would be a game. So the game itself was part of the marketing, like try the software, play the game. The resource had an entertaining storyline, which people got engaged with. It incorporated a worldwide race, numerous missions, awards, and Badgeville platform components. At the same time, they evoked social influence mechanics by connecting users with their social marketing sites and community platforms, including YouTube and Facebook. So what this is saying here is that they connected with social media, and people who were playing the game got really into playing the game, and they were posting on Facebook to say, hey, I just finished this mission, how are you guys doing? Or, hey, I'm beating you on the leaderboard, I've got further in the trial than you have. And so people were doing word of mouth advertising because they were playing this game. So it was really, really powerful for this brand to include the game in their trial software. And I mean, it's boring software, it's hard to learn, it's complicated, but when you team it with a game, suddenly everything becomes more fun. And we can use this concept for everything. Like, think about what you want your customers to do. You want them to buy from you, you want them to keep coming back to you, you want them to trust you and be interested in you, you want them to tell their friends about you. And putting game elements into your product, into your marketing, can really help boost all of those things. So I've recently been learning about this guy called Youkai Chow, and he is going deep into gamification, and he's done some really, really interesting things, which are all on his blog. You can go and check it out down here. It's called youkaichow.com, and he has loads of information on his blog. Like, it's a lot of stuff. But he's connecting gamification with marketing. And what he did was he looked at what drives us as humans. And his feeling is that game elements fulfill these drives. By playing games, you're really fulfilling these very psychological impulses and drives that we have. And these are the 8 drives that he has identified. The first one at the top is meaning. And he calls it epic meaning, or a calling or meaning. So it's about finding the meaning of life. It's about having purpose. And he said, like, one example of that is when you, and he put it there, beginner's luck. And if you look at all of these little elements here, these are all game elements that meet these core drives. And he talks about each one on his blog, so you can really study them if you want to go deep into this. But he says an example of epic calling and meaning is like when you play a game and at the beginning of the game you suddenly get this magic sword and you're like, wow, I must be blessed, this magic sword has come into my possession. And he calls that beginner's luck. Like, you're just amazed when you start playing the game that you happen to have this epic sword, and now because you have that epic sword, you are ready to go and fight the dragons. Like, clearly you were destined to play this game and be part of this. So that kind of feeds into this idea of epic meaning, or that there's a big narrative going on and you are the hero of that narrative. Like, this is a very big drive in humans, that we all kind of want to be part of that. We all want to feel like we have a purpose, we have an epic meaning, purpose in life. Then he also has 2 other core drives at the top. He has accomplishment and empowerment. So accomplishment is standard gamification. That's what a lot of people think about when they think of gamification. It's getting on the leaderboard, it's scoring points, it's getting status points and symbols, it's like being the person that's cooler than everyone else, and just counting up all your accomplishments. How well are you doing? It's like a visual representation of your accomplishments. So that has even simple things like progress bars. And we just talked about how Udemy has progress bars, so you can see how well you're doing in a course. Leaderboard, similarly. You know, like when you're a kid and you're at school and you get your essay back and you're like, oh, I got 80%. I wonder what everyone else got. That's really what a leaderboard does. It tells you how well you are doing compared to everyone else. And I think that can be a very human drive to know how well your achievement is, like how big of an achievement is something you've done, or whether everyone's doing the same thing. And a leaderboard is kind of along those same lines. So then at the top, we also have empowerment. And empowerment, he describes it as empowerment of creativity and feedback. And this is an interesting one. So he starts off talking about boosters. And if you've played Super Mario or any of the Mario games, you know that when Mario eats a mushroom, he gets big and he gets more powerful and he gets more interesting because he can now jump further, he can run further. And that concept of boosters is all about empowerment. Suddenly you have more powers, you have more skills than you had before. And that also includes freedom of choice. Like now you can say, okay, well, I don't want to fight dragons with the sword. I want to fight dragons with a gun, or I want to fight dragons with an axe. Or suddenly, like in Grand Theft Auto, you discover you have a rocket pack. Like that is empowerment. It's when you suddenly get new powers or new skills. Now think about that in a marketing point of view. Maybe your new users start off, they only have a certain sort of linear path. They only have certain products they can buy. And then you give them the next level. So like, for example, I just went to Yogurtland. And they just, to buy ice cream. So they have like frozen yogurt and you get the ice cream and you eat it and you get rewards every time you go and get ice cream. And I just found out I've got platinum rewards now at Yogurtland. And my immediate response was like, oh, I've got to look this up. What rewards do I get when I get platinum Yogurtland status? And now suddenly I have empowerment. They've given me some new skills, like I get more rewards, I get more free ice cream, and basically that's it. I get more free ice cream, and maybe they make a fuss of me on my birthday. But that psychological charge, like that's a total element of gamification. Like Yogurtland have gamified the process of buying ice cream. So like these games don't have to be complicated. They can be very, very simple. They're just adding little elements of game to whatever it is you're selling. Now, moving down the circle to ownership, like this is another very sort of standard drive. We like to collect things. And I think things like Pandora and Troll Beads, all those jewelry companies have really, really sort of tapped into that idea of collectibles. Because you have a charm bracelet and you want to go and buy all the different charms, collect them and put them on your bracelet. And there's a lot of other companies, I think cosmetic companies do that. They're like, no, you have to buy all our lipsticks or all our nail polishes. Shoe companies, I think there really is that sense of collectability. And with ownership, there are also things like virtual goods. Maybe you can give people digital badges, digital items that they collect and that they feel good about owning. And the cool thing is, if those items that they have do something, like they give you some sort of, like one example, I play Call of Duty, and every so often when I've played a mission and I've done it well, I get a calling card. And the calling card is just a little animation that when I shoot someone, that calling card pops up and says, hey, this is what I did. And they're little cartoons. Some of them have like pictures of sea monsters or someone drinking beer or whatever it is. But I collected that calling card and it has a purpose. It's used to sort of taunt your opponent. And that is a digital item that does something that I own. And if someone took that calling card away from me now, I'd be kind of sad. Even though I didn't pay for it, it represents the work I put in and it's something I own. And people get very, very weird about ownership. Like, even if someone gives you a free beer, if you're at a party and someone gives you a beer and you put down that beer and someone else like drinks it, you're like, that's my beer. What? Even though you got it free. So think about your products. Think about your marketing. What can you give people that gives them a sense of ownership and that makes them connected to your brand? They'll be like, wow, you gave me like this little goodie bag, or you gave me like whatever. Like it can be a physical item, so it can be like a bonus, or it can be a digital item. Like, for example, I buy perfume from a company called BPAL, and they always put at Christmas time, they did like little naughty and nice treats. At Halloween, they did trick or treat scents, and they're just little tiny perfumes that they put in with your order. But you know, it makes you feel really good about the brand. You're like, wow, I like this brand. They give me free stuff. It's cool. It's interesting. I can collect it. And you'd be really bummed if someone took that away from you now. You'd be like, no, that's my little free tiny perfume that I have. Customers really, really appreciate things that they can own, things that they can look at, feel proud of, and say, yeah, that's mine. That's my thing that I collected and I own it. Now, when we were talking about Autodesk, they mentioned Badgeville, the Badgeville platform components. And Badgeville are actually all about ownership in a weird way. You see this? These are all achievements, and they're basically Girl Scout badges that people put in their profiles on websites. So if you have a website, whatever it is you're doing, you can add Badgeville components to your website. And what that does is your customer now has a profile on the site, and you can give them achievements for whatever they do on your website, whether it's like reading your company profile, sending you an email, sending you a message, trying out a product. All of those things can give your customers badges. But that really taps into that sense of ownership, just using something as simple as a digital badge. So let's jump across to social influence and networking. And, you know, this is a huge drive for most humans. Most of us like to connect with other humans. We like to give things, give gifts. We like to join groups. We like to collaborate with people, work with people. And he's put here, tout flags. Like, we like to be in a clan. A lot of video games have clans and groups, and you can all go into a dungeon and kill the dragon together, and you get extra bonuses if you do it as a group. Like, humans tend to be very drawn to teamwork. Not all humans. Some people like to be the lone wolf and go out on their own, but a lot of us are drawn in some way to working with other humans. And I think this can be, and friending. I mean, friending is right there at the top. Like, Facebook is one of the ultimate sort of gamifiers of social networking. Like, ooh, look how many friends I have. Ooh, look at all these people. How many likes did I get on this comment? How many ha-has did I get? Like, it's complete gamification. So social influence, another big driver of gamification. So now the bottom half, scarcity, unpredictability, and avoidance, he calls those Blackhat drives. And the difference, he says, is that you don't feel in control of the game. The crazy thing is, they can be more urgent drives to play the game, but they don't make you feel good in the long term. And it's interesting because I see very, very strong parallels to marketing here. Like, these Blackhat methods, very like hard sell tactics in marketing. Like, time is running out, book now, there's only 5 seats remaining, only this, only that, the price will go up. Like, all of these things. Like, you're like, okay, the price is going to go up, I better sign up because I don't want to lose out. Oh no, there's only 5 seats. Okay, fine, I'm going to sign up. Like, you sign up, you buy it, you would go with the urgency, but you also kind of feel manipulated. You kind of feel like you were under duress to do those things. And this is really what this taps into. So let's go around these 3 and talk about them. So scarcity, he talks about scarcity, and he says this can be things like a countdown timer. Like, you have to play the game, time is running out. He talks about like dangling and prize pacing. Like, okay, you've got to play the game for this long and then you'll get the prize. And I don't know if you've played like World of Warcraft, but they're very much about you have to go and grind before you can level up, and you know that you'll be able to level up in half an hour if you just kill 20 more goblins, but you're kind of bored of the game, so you just play just to get to that level, and then things will get better. So it's kind of seeing the end and knowing the end is in sight, but you're not really enjoying the game, you're just playing it to get to that particular milestone or achievement. He also says things like countdown timers, last mile, like you're on the last mile, keep going, keep going. He calls them torture breaks, and what those are is basically you're having fun playing. That's kind of the opposite. That's when you're having fun playing the game, but you have to take a break. So he says come back in 2 hours and this achievement will be unlocked for you. So like imagine you're playing Super Mario and suddenly you find you can't get any mushrooms. You run out of mushrooms, but in 2 hours the mushroom counter will reset. So you're like, okay, I've got to log in 2 hours to get my mushroom. Okay, fine. So this concept of scarcity, like it's running out, there's not enough. It applies to games. It also applies to marketing. Avoidance is another one. And avoidance is really about like, oh my gosh, I don't want this thing to happen. This is a bad thing that happened. So like sunk cost prison is a great one. I mean, if people have spent a lot of money on something, they're going to pretend that they enjoy it. They're going to try and convince themselves that they enjoy it because they've already put so much money into that. So it's like the money is sunk into that. They're going to stick with it. The FOMO punch is the fear of missing out. So, I mean, the FOMO punch could be something, like, I guess even our advent calendar is kind of like hiding things behind doors, so you want to know what's behind the door. Like, oh no, I've got the fear of missing out if I don't open the door and see what's there. I also see this all the time on Facebook, like that fear of missing out when people are like, hey, you've got to watch this webinar to find out this really, really cool thing. Like most clickbait actually uses fear of missing out. You'll never believe what this person did next. You'll never believe what happens. That really taps that fear of missing out. Visual grave is a really fun one as well. That's when you see all the terrible things that happened and you're like, okay, I'll do better next time. We had a game show in the UK that was called Bullseye, and people played darts and then they won things depending on how well they played darts. At the end, they always had this opportunity to win a big prize. And then they said, do you want to take the big prize or do you want to gamble for an even bigger cash prize? And then if they gambled, they had to play some more darts. And if they lost everything. They lost the big prize, the big mystery prize, and they lost the cash prize. And the game show host would rub it in by saying, well, let's take a look at what you could have won. And then the curtains would go back and they'd wheel in like a new car or a holiday to the Bahamas or whatever it was. And people would be all sad. They'd be like, oh, I could have won that. That's the visual grave. That's like, oh no, you failed. Oh dear. And it makes you want to say, okay, I'll play again. Let me have another go at that. And another big driver to get people playing your game. And then the last one on here is unpredictability. And this is basically Las Vegas. Like you keep hitting that slot machine because you're not quite sure what's going to happen. You know, people love those games like Wheel of Fortune because you don't really know what's going to go on. Like if you hit the Wheel of Fortune, it's like ding, 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 ding. Okay, why are there like aliens jumping across the screen? Why is the sevens flashing everywhere? Oh, wait, now that's a pinball game? Like, you know that sense when you're in a casino and you're playing some crazy slot machine and you don't quite know what's going to happen next? That's a game technique. That's like keep people trying just to see what happens. And you can tap into this sense of unpredictability in your games by surprising people. Like suddenly maybe you tell them a story, or maybe like a little character pops up on your website and says, hey, you didn't expect this. I'm going to give you a free gift. Sign up for my free gift here. Like you can surprise people with unpredictability. Another thing that's mentioned here is Easter eggs, and I think Easter eggs are a great example of unpredictability. Like you're doing something boring and suddenly you find out there's this cool thing hidden away, and it makes you wonder what else is hidden away. And it kind of taps to the fear of missing out. Like, okay, what else am I missing out on? I've got to keep using this brand or this website to find out what's going on and what is going to be next. So let's stick with Octalysis for a moment longer, just because I think this is such an interesting analysis with so many parallels to marketing that you can use. But I already mentioned that he said there's white hat gamification and black hat, and he divided it into the top and bottom halves of his Octalysis diagram. And what he says is that the white hat drives make us feel powerful, fulfilled, and satisfied. These are motivations that engage the user on expressing creativity and achievement through mastering skills, which results in a higher sense of accomplishment, meaning, and empowerment. So people feel like they have deserved where they've got to. They're like, wow, I found some meaning through playing this game. I've accomplished something because I've mastered these skills. So like think about if you play like Street Fighter or something like that and you get really, really good at the button combinations and you defeat all the bad guys. Like you genuinely accomplished that. You figured out the muscle control and the mental, the hand-eye coordination and the persistence to actually accomplish that task. So these are really positive things. It's being rewarded for things that you feel you've worked towards. And also empowerment. Empowerment's great. It makes you feel powerful, fulfilled, and satisfied. Like, great, I leveled up. I got to the next level. I unlocked this new world. I remember when I was playing a game called Red Dead Redemption, and I was like on my horse, because it's like a cowboy game. And I was on my horse and I was playing the game and suddenly I unlocked Mexico. And it was like the coolest thing. Suddenly I could ride my horse across the border and like go to all the villages and meet the people who are now speaking Spanish. It was like, whoa, this is an epic moment. And the game designers knew it was an epic moment because they put in all this like epic Western music, like da da da. And you see like the landscape before you and the sunset. And it's like this beautiful moment. Like that moment has stayed with me because I remember it. And it was because of the sense of empowerment. I think it tapped all these white hat things. It was accomplishment because I'd finished so much of the game that I was now in Mexico. It had meaning because it moved the story of my character on. And it was empowering because like now I had this whole new world to go explore and new skills, new achievements that went with that. So it was like a huge white hat gamification moment. And I think you can do similar things. I think you can do similar things with your programs, with your website, with the way you interact with your customers. How can you give them these epic moments? Like what can you do for your customers that could generate an epic moment like that? Now, one thing is interesting. He says that white hat drives don't have a lot of urgency. Like, I am going to go and save the world, but after I've had coffee. So it's like, you're going to go and sit down and play this game or join in and do this amazing thing, but there's no urgency. You can go and do whatever you need to do first and then look forward to doing that later this evening. Now, black hat drives have a lot more urgency. So he says black hat drives, which are scarcity, unpredictability, and avoidance, and they make us feel obsessed, anxious, and addicted. And I think games like Farmville are like that. I tend to play a lot of those games that I get sort of like, oh, am I still playing this stupid game? I have one that's just, you literally just add numbers together. They're blocks with numbers and you just keep adding them together until your time runs out. Like, it's a stupid game. And I don't really know why I play it, but I think it's an addiction. It's like you feel addicted to these games. If you're always doing something because you don't know what will happen next, if you're constantly in fear of losing something, or you're struggling to attain things you can't have, you start to feel kind of bad about it. You're like, yeah, I don't really want to play this game anymore. Like, it doesn't leave me feeling good. It doesn't leave me feeling like I got anywhere. I just keep playing it because I'm worried about losing access to the game if I stop playing it. I'm worried about losing the progress I've made, or like whatever reason. Like, you keep playing the game because you kind of feel like you have to. He says, he takes it to the extreme, like, go out and change the world or I'm going to kill you. It's like, you'll do it, you'll play it, but only because you're afraid. Like, there's a gun to your head. You're like, okay, I guess I'll play the game now because I don't want to lose what I've done so far. Now, the interesting thing is that by using white hat and black hat, he uses them in a slightly different way from the ways we talk about them in marketing. Like, usually with marketing, we talk about black hat for things that are borderline illegal or against the policies of whatever site we're using, whether it's Google or Facebook or Amazon. Black hat tends to be things which are against the rules. Now, in Octalysis, he doesn't mean black hat is against the rules or illegal or wrong or unethical, and he actually gives examples of black hat methods that can be a very positive thing. For example, he says there was like an alarm clock that takes money from your bank account every time you hit the snooze button. He said there's even another version that shreds dollar bills when you hit the snooze button. So you actually, it's like, are you willing to spend $1 or lose $1 just to hit the snooze button and get 10 minutes more sleep? And that's a very black hat method, but at the same time, you could be using it in a positive way. Similarly, having a swear jar. Every time you swear or you say something, you have to put money in the swear jar. And I think we actually talked about this in the signature programs. That was one of the examples in that. And that's kind of a Blackhat method, like you feel obliged, you feel forced into taking that action. But at the same time, you might do it because it's good for you. So Blackhat doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, it's just more about the way it makes you feel. Now, there's actually another element to the Octalysis diagram. I know this is getting kind of mind-blowing, and we'll move on after this one. But there is another element to it, which I thought was really interesting as well. He says the left-hand side, like accomplishment, ownership, and scarcity, these are things which are associated with analytical thought and logic and ownership. So they're about collecting things, they're about owning things, they're about building something. Whereas the right brain, so very much reward driven. The left brain is all about reward, being driven by rewards. And what we talked about with Badgeville, the Badgeville system, that's very left brain. Like you get a reward for each thing you try, each achievement you unlock. Your right brain, and he describes empowerment, social pressure, and unpredictability. He says that these are about intrinsic motivation. So you have left brain is extrinsic motivation, which is rewards that are given to you for doing certain things, whereas right brain drives tap into your intrinsic drives. So if we think about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, the needs on that are very intrinsic. We have a very intrinsic internal desire inside us to do certain things, to connect with friends, to be creative, to express ourselves, to learn, to grow. And so what he says is that empowerment, social pressure, unpredictability, these tap into our intrinsic motivations. So creativity, self-expression, and social dynamics. He says you don't need a goal or a reward to use your creativity or to hang out with friends or to feel the suspense of unpredictability. So it's basically the left-hand side are goals and rewards. The right-hand side are more about exploring and being creative and connecting with people. And one thing that he says is really interesting is that he says you have to balance the extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. Because what actually happens if you're just getting extrinsic motivation, you kind of get sick of it. You start saying, okay, well, I just got all these points. That's kind of meaningless. Now, if you balance that with social pressure, then the points have more meaning. Like, okay, I've been working with all my friends and I got all these points. It's kind of like Facebook likes. Like, I feel Facebook likes are such a good combination of ownership and social pressure, and accomplishment. Like, okay, I got all these likes and it's because of the context. It's because I have friends. It's because I'm putting out content and I'm connecting with people. So he really thinks a good system needs a balance of extrinsic rewards and intrinsic rewards. So extrinsic, rewards from outside of you, intrinsic, meeting your actual human needs. And he says that if you have too much extrinsic motivation, like points, rewards, badges, any of those things, he says that actually impairs your intrinsic motivation. So if you just become all about rewards and money and points, you lose that sense of expression and creativity. I really think he's kind of onto something here, that you need to balance the two out. And he says that if it becomes just about extrinsic rewards, then you lose interest in the intrinsic motivation, which ultimately kind of loses your long-term interest in the game. And so you'll probably stop playing or stop engaging with that brand. So you really need to figure out how to balance these things. So let's start thinking of this in a more practical way. How can we bring this into our products? How can we bring this into our signature program? How can we bring this into our Facebook groups? So the easiest way is really setting challenges and issuing rewards. So if you've gone through the class in this course on creating a challenge, you've probably already done this. You've probably already gamified something. But you can gamify anything. And I've taken this actually from the Magic Formulas course. And if you want to delve into that, we do go into a little bit of detail in there as well about gamification. But this is what I pulled out in Magic Formulas. I said there are a lot of things you can gamify. You can gamify everyday tasks. So like walking, you can have pedometers. Like pedometers are really about gamifying walking. Hey, I did this many miles a day, aren't I cool? And you can share it on Facebook. You can say I walked this many miles. And also heart rate. Like I have a heart rate monitor on my phone. and I can put my finger on the camera and it tells me my heart rate. And I can share that on Facebook and say, hey, I'm healthier than you guys. I've got this heart rate. Like, there are all kinds of ways to gamify everyday tasks. And the cool thing is, if you know your heart rate, you can work towards like improving that. People are very driven by target goals, whether it's like their blood sugar, whether it's their weight, whether it's their heart rate. These are sort of measurable. And I think it taps into SMART goals. You know, we keep talking about SMART goals, having specific, measurable, achievable, all of these things. That's the M, that's the measurable. So make these things measurable and you could have your signature program. You could have your challenge. You can gamify cooking, drinking, knitting, fishing, cleaning, praying, pet care, like a rosary beads. You count your rosary or you move your rosary as you're praying. Like, all of these things are sort of visual representations. They're a way of keeping track of what you're doing, understanding what you're doing, and setting new goals. So in a way, it's very much reflective of SMART goals. You can gamify your house. I thought this was a really cool idea. So you can make apps to conserve your electricity. You could strategize yard work by turning it into a game. Maybe you have a big board on your wall. Like, a lot of these things can become products, like physical products. If you came up with a yard work chart, you could put that on your wall and then all the kids could tick off when they've done their yard work. And it could be like a feature of your house. Like, that's a product you could just sell on Amazon. You can reward car washing. There's all kinds of things you could gamify around the house. You can gamify relationships. So a lot of this is very like the challenges we talked about. When we talked about setting a challenge for your community, for your audience, this taps right into it. It also taps right into when we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Gamify your relationships, set date challenges, plan quality time with the kids. Gamify your workplace, church, school, community commitments, scout troops. So there's a lot of ways of doing this. You could set group challenges like, hey, we're all going to go and clean up the beach and everyone who does that gets a pizza or gets points that you can spend on whatever you want to spend them on. Like you can find all these ways to give people rewards when they do something. Gamify processes like rehab, physical therapy, addiction treatment, and pregnancy and childbirth. Like, there are elements to all of these things that can be gamified because they can be measured and they can be divided down into tasks. So think about progress. How do you monitor progress? How do you get people committed to their progress? I think AA for alcoholics, I think that is kind of gamified. That whole sense of having the 12 steps, like something you can actually follow. It's almost like having missions or quests. Like, that is a powerful concept. Turn tasks that you want your audience to do. Can you frame them as a quest? Can you frame them as a battle? Can you frame them as a boss fight? Like, there's a lot of ways to get people to think about things in a very new or different way. One of the classic examples, and I've talked about it before in other courses, is the game Run Zombies Run. And I think that's such a genius example of gamification. What it is, it's an audio game that you can listen to in your headphones. You're at the gym, you're running on a treadmill, and it's like the zombies are chasing you, the zombies are attacking you. And it's using this gamification element of pretend and role play to get you to run faster. And I think that's very interesting combination of the black hat and the white hat, because the black hat thing is, okay, it's urgent, you've got to run, the zombies are chasing you, and if you get caught by the zombies, you'll die. That's a very black hat thing. But at the same time, it's having a very positive white hat effect on you, that when you finish your game, when you finish your workout at the gym, you're going to feel awesome. So use gamification to create products that actually do great things in the real world. And that's what this page is about. It's about how can you add game elements to your program to make people work harder at them and to be more committed to them. Gamify time. Like, what can you do to clocks? What can you do with calendars and schedules? How do you make a clock more interesting? How can you gamify that process? Maybe you can have a reward clock. An advent calendar is a great example of this. An advent calendar is really gamified time. Each day you get a reward until a certain point, and then you get the big reward on December 24th when you get to party on Christmas Eve. Can you gamify schedules? Like our bullet journals, is that an example of gamification? In the Curate course, a lot of people made bullet journals or dot journals with codes and keys on the side. Is that an example of gamification? Maybe, but it is a way of creating a new product. And I think the key thing here is people are asking, why can't this be fun? Why don't you take everyday events or big events and make them into something fun, make them more addictive for people? Okay, so there's a lot of ways to analyze game mechanics, and Youkai Chow put a lot into Octalysis. He lists all kinds of game mechanics. There's also a great list from Bunchball. I talked about Bunchball right back at the beginning of this class when I defined gamification. They also have a list of game mechanics that's a little bit shorter. So I pulled this list from Bunchball, and I think it's really helpful if you're looking at all of these things we just talked about, all of the things here that you can gamify, like tasks, your house, relationships, processes, time. It's actually really helpful to look at these and think, well, how can you intersect these mechanics with these events or times or processes? And these are the game mechanics they list. So the first is immediate feedback, and this is like notifications. Notifications are very much feedback, like, hey, you reached this goal, hey, someone's talking to you, someone just sent you a message, you've got mail. Feedback is an immediate game mechanic. The next thing is transparency, and I think this is very much leaderboards. This is knowing whether you got 80% and everyone else got 85% or everyone else got 60%. Like, you want to know where everyone stands. So putting in leaderboards and actually displaying statistics, and I notice Facebook do this more and more. Like now in groups, they give you the top 10 contributors to a group. So I can post and say, these are the top 10 treasure hunters this month, because they're the people who have posted the most in the group. So transparency is a big game mechanic, being able to compare yourself to everyone else who is in the game. Goals. That's kind of an obvious one, but short and long-term goals, which can be missions, quests, battles, fights, races, anything that ends in some kind of achievement. So set goals with your product, with your book. And this could be in a book. It could be something like a bullet journal that at the end of each page of your journal, people have a goal to achieve. It could also be part of your challenge, of course. So goals. Badges, and we've talked about badges. We talked about Badgeville, which is a service that will actually put badges onto your website for you. So badges, either a physical badge or, and hey, imagine how cool that would be if you send badges out to your customers. In fact, that's funny. I was eBaying Cadillac badges. I guess Cadillac used to give out badges to people when they bought their first, second, third, fourth Cadillac. And I got a bunch of them from an estate sale and they sold for so much money. So badges literally, like physically, could be a great reward for your customers. Maybe you can send them actual pins or badges or stickers or a patch perhaps. Like think about people wearing patch jackets. They wear patch jackets to represent all of the cool concerts they've been to. So badges are evidence of accomplishments. Or of course you can use digital badges, which are graphics or images or icons that people will feel happy to show somewhere. They can post on their profile, they can post on social media. Leveling up is a great game mechanic, just showing people your achievement. And a lot of social media uses this. They use like, how long have you been part of this platform? Like how many tweets have you made? How many pins have you done on Pinterest? And you'll see like Reddit has karma and upvoting, downvoting. People can collect these badges on Reddit. So leveling up is a big thing. What is your status in a community? And you can do this with your group. You can do this with your community. Like how do you reward the people that have stuck with your community a long time or have made big contributions to it? Onboarding, and all the onboarding is really how do you get people to learn. So if you've created a program or you've created some kind of system or product, How do you bring people into this? And we had the great example with Autodesk that they offered a trial of their program, but also they gamified that trial and said, how can we get people really enjoying and getting into the process and learning what they need to learn? Because if you make learning boring, people will switch off. They'll say, okay, I haven't got time for this. But if they're having fun, they can learn while they're having fun. And I think that's such a powerful thing. Competition, how I am doing compared to others. This is really just a more extrinsic version of transparency, like actually saying, okay, you can compete on these terms. And it gives some suggestions, like give time-based, team and individualized leaderboards. Where do you rank? How do you overtake your closest competitor? So if you can find ways to gamify your process that encourages people to compete with their friends, that can actually be something that they'll share on social media and turn into encouragement for other people, like, hey, I'm scoring this, who can beat me? And you can actually build that into your systems by creating like Facebook posts they can share. Collaboration is kind of the opposite of competition. Instead of fighting against each other or competing against each other, can you get people collaborating and working together in teams? How would that work with your product? I mentioned the BPAL perfume before, but one of the things they do is that people will do group buys. So they'll all connect up and say, hey, I want to try all these perfumes. Let's buy all of them. And then we'll share them out amongst ourselves by decanting the big perfumes into little ones that we can all share. So is there a way to collaborate and encourage people to work as a team with your product? This also describes community as a game mechanic, which I think is really interesting. They say sharing participant achievements creates energy in the community by making people aware of what others are doing. It's kind of like peer pressure, that if you see other people doing cool things, and I see this in a lot of online selling groups and e-commerce groups, people will want to share, like, hey, I sent 10 boxes to Amazon, or I made this much money. It creates context that other people are like, oh, that's what we do in this group. Okay, cool. Well, I sent this many boxes and this was the experience I had. And people want to join in. They want to see what the context, what the community is doing, and they want to join in with that. Community injects importance into the extrinsic rewards. So goals and badges and missions and rewards are kind of meaningless without context. But when you can start putting those badges on your Facebook profile or on your website profile, then suddenly they have more value, and it's because of the context of the community. And then lastly, it gives you points. And points is actually a big topic. I mean, points can be anything. It can be score, it can be rewards, it can be badges, like it can be a currency. You can use your points or your score to trade it in for a gift card or something you can buy in the real world. But I think thinking about how you can inject a point system into your product or community can be the first step to gamification. Like, what do I want to reward my customers for doing, or my potential customers? What behaviors do I want to reward, and how can I do that in a way that's meaningful? So I want to show you something cool. Hopefully Magic Formula students will be familiar with this, but this is a tool in Tangent that is called the Formulizer, and we actually have game mechanics built right into this. We also have some other magic formulas and frameworks put in here, but we'll just talk about game mechanics for now. So you can go through these lists of tasks, like maybe the school run. Maybe you want to gamify the school run. What you could do is have an element. You know, this could be dangerous. You could do racing or a drink. You probably don't want to have a drinking game with the school run. But actually, you could have forfeits. Like, okay, if you do the school run and you were late to school, then you have to do a forfeit. So you have to do chores. Oh, so that kind of generates an idea for me that you could say to your kids, okay, you have to get dressed on time and we've got to leave the house at this time. And if you don't, then this is the forfeit you have tonight. You could also do collecting. So when you're on the school run, you could collect, oh, you know, like the punch buggy game. So like when you see like a punch buggy, you go punch buggy. You could have a collecting game on the school run where you collect different types of cars. You make a note of all the different types of cars you see. So you can use the Formulizer for just generating game ideas. Like, how would it look if you turned cooking into a murder mystery or a balancing game? Oh, that can make a fun video. That can make some fun marketing, I think. Or random elements, like, okay, you could do cooking dice. We're going to throw dice for what we're going to cook tonight, or draw cards, or spin a spinner. Like, all of these things can be products. They can be something that you do with your customers or your audience in your Facebook group. They can be marketing games. They can be something to draw people to your brand. Like, there's a lot of different ways of using these, but Tangent Formulizer is really designed to help you come up with some of these ideas. And you can also go through the list of life transitions. So maybe you could gamify something like a birthday. You could create a birthday game and sell it on Amazon, or sell it as a digital game. Like, okay, I've made a printable for the birthday game, and this is how you play the birthday game. Maybe you tick off everything you do on a birthday, or it has some kind of checklist with all the things that can happen on your birthday. Or maybe you could just do a quiz for Facebook. And I know a lot of us talk about viral marketing on Facebook and how to create a viral post on Facebook. Well, a lot of people are doing things like never have I ever, and that's become a really popular Facebook post that a lot of people are doing. So they do never have I ever, and then they make a list of things like parachuted, jumped out of a plane, got a tattoo, eaten a bug, like all these things, and you have to say what you've never done. Maybe you could do like a game for your birthday and turn this into a post like never have I ever on my birthday, and use that on Facebook as a viral marketing post that will get people interacting and posting it to their friends. So it could just draw attention to your Facebook page by making a post that has a game in it that people can play and share with their friends. Like, you've probably seen in treasure hunting, I've sometimes posted those puzzles where people pour coffee and it drips down into the coffee cup, and you say which cup's going to get filled first. Well, that's total gamification right there. And the crazy thing is, it gets more engagement than when I say, hey, do you want to see how I sold all this product? And I give a really educational post. Often I find that the puzzles, like the silly games and the puzzles, get way more engagement than actual educational, useful posts. So it's something that drives me nuts about Facebook. I'm like, I want to learn, I want to do things that are cool, I want to do things that educate, but sometimes people just want to play. Now, if you remember, back at the very, very beginning on day one of this course, we talked about inbound marketing, and we talked about a survey that was filled out by marketers who talked about what they saw as the biggest disruptions in marketing. And two of the things that were mentioned as potential huge disruptions were virtual reality and alternate reality. And I think virtual reality is absolutely fascinating, but that's a whole topic in itself. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. But let's talk about alternate reality, because this very, very much taps into gamification and the concepts around games. So alternate reality is really popular with a lot of fiction writers. It can be something simple like, imagine if the other side had won a big war, or imagine if Elvis was still alive, or imagine, it's taking one element or a couple of elements of the real world and changing those. Like, imagine if this other thing happened. And alternate reality has been used a lot in video games, it's been used in performance art, and one of the biggest, this was probably the start of alternate reality, was a game called I Love Bees. And it happened in 2004. And what happened was it started out with people receiving jars of honey in the mail. So people who were known to play these kind of games and to be interested in these kind of games, they opened their mailbox and found a jar of honey. And the jar of honey had instructions sending them to this website called ilovebees.com. And at first, it looked like a regular website. Margaret's Honey, learn about how she has her bees and how she puts together the honey and have fun with it, learn all about her. And it seemed like a boring, normal website. And over time, the website suddenly got hacked or appeared to get hacked, and all this crazy stuff started happening. And people got fascinated with the story, like what was happening to Margaret's website, who was hacking it, what was going on. And it just grew and grew and grew with updates happening to the game. and suddenly public telephones started ringing and people were having to go places to answer the phone and hear messages and getting deeper and deeper into the game. And it turned out there was like this, it got so complicated that there was like a robot, artificial intelligence taking over the website and taking over the internet and threatening the world. And every time the site was updated, 500,000 people visited. Like more and more people got into this game and got obsessed with it and what was going to happen next. And I think what was so amazing was that the elements started to drift out, not just from this website, but that they were affecting real life. Things started to crop up in real life, like the ringing telephones. And this is such an immersive thing. Like when people start playing alternate reality games, they get obsessed with them. They get really, really into them. And basically, I Love Bees ended up being a whole marketing campaign for the video game Halo 2. So people didn't even know what it was about. They didn't know why they were playing this. They didn't know why they were following along with this. But they went with it because it seemed fun and it seemed interesting. And so communities popped up. People were talking about like, hey, what do you think's going on? What do you think the conspiracy is? How do we solve this puzzle? And it became a huge thing. So alternate reality games have been just tapping along quietly since 2004. There are other alternate reality games. And now we've got to a point where we have things like Pokemon Go. And Pokemon Go is a classic alternate reality. Like everything is normal. You're in the world. You hold up your phone and suddenly there's a Pokemon there, like imprinted on the real world. Like you're looking at your cup of coffee and there's Pikachu. If you look at it through your phone, there's Pikachu sat on your cup of coffee. So the thing with alternate reality, it's here, it's around, the potential is there. Like we know that psychologically people get very drawn into these games. It's hard to implement well. You have to decide sort of, it's almost like in a TV show when a character suddenly turns around and breaks the fourth wall and talks to you. That is like an alternate reality game. It's like it disrupts your sense of reality. And the potential is really, really here for you to do a lot of things with alternate reality. There are performance groups. There's a group called Blast Theory, and they've done some really interesting alternate reality games where people join in and they take place in a city. And then what will happen is suddenly the people who are playing the game, someone will walk up to them and say, hey, there's a parcel over there. Go and check it out. And suddenly they're in the game. And I think there's like a big draw at the moment for things like escape rooms. People are playing a lot of escape rooms where they go and play a game and they're in this experience. They're in a room and there are props. There's a puzzle to solve and they have to solve the puzzle. And I think people are getting very, very interested in experience, in actually playing a game in the real world, playing a game online, and not quite knowing where the boundaries are of the game. And I think if you can find a way to tap into this idea of alternate reality, it can be a really, really powerful marketing technique. It worked really well for Halo 2. Yes, they had a huge budget for it, but I don't think that's the end of alternate reality. And I think a lot of marketers are in this position of saying, well, alternate reality has this huge potential. And when it peaks, when people really figure it out, that's when there's going to be something huge. That's when it's going to disrupt marketing as we know it. We know people want to play. We know people want to be absorbed in games. We know people love interactive fiction and they love sense of mystery. So what elements of this can we bring into marketing? So to bring this down to earth a little bit more, I wanted to expand the idea of an alternate reality, or maybe simplify the idea of an alternate reality, and talk about creating a culture. And if you have a Facebook group, if you have a forum, if you have a website, if you have a brand, you get to set the culture of your brand. And of course, sometimes it evolves organically. Like I feel that treasure hunting kind of evolved organically in many, many ways. But I do also know that some of the culture came from me and how I wanted to run the group. So it's very much an interaction of my input and my vision and how much I've let other people contribute to the group and to the community. That is an interesting choice. Like how you build your culture is up to you. The rules you set on your community, those are totally up to you. If you want to set yourself up as a dictator and say, well, if you're in my group, you have to follow my rules, you can do that, and maybe you'll get away with it. A lot of people will just say, if there's too many rules, I'm out of here. I can go somewhere where I'm valued and appreciated. So it's very much like a balance. But sometimes rules are very much appreciated. Like, I love this picture here of the Red Hat Society. These are like older ladies who wear red hats and wear purple. And of course they can say, I'm not going out wearing purple. I'm not going to wear a stupid red hat, which is fine. But then you don't get the fun of going and joining in and being like, yeah, I'm a red hat person. Like, they have a good time because they follow the rules and they join in with that. And so it's like give and take. You follow the rules, but also you get this big reward for doing it. Now, setting the culture of a group is a really interesting thing. And if you look at a lot of different Facebook groups, you'll see how the admin run them in very different ways. Like, some groups are very aggressive and people will argue in them, people can swear, people can debate. Other groups are very kind and very supportive, and they say, no, if you debate with people or if you argue, you're out of the group. So like, it's really up to different people how they run groups. And it's funny because I find that people who are in a group start seeing that group's way as the only way. Like, okay, these are the rules of this group, and they imagine they apply to every other group, when that's not necessarily true. But what I think is really interesting is there are some groups where they almost force you to suspend your disbelief. And one of those places is the Reddit forum No Sleep. And what they do is pretty brilliant. They allow authors to share their horror stories, but the key is that all the people who read the stories have to act as if it's true. Like, oh my gosh. So like, if someone goes, okay, guys, I've got to tell you this terrible thing. A child walked out of my TV screen. People can't go, that's stupid. What? That doesn't happen. I don't believe you. You're not allowed to say that. That's against the rules. The rules are that you have to say, oh my gosh, what did she look like? What was she wearing? Like, what did she do next? What did you do? Like, you can interact, but you have to accept the story, that the story is true. And there are a lot of other groups that are like this, where it's not so obvious, but there's almost peer pressure to say, yes, this is a true thing. One example, this is a group that I joined, I don't know, a month or two ago. And I think this almost does the same thing, but almost like the exact opposite way. So there's a group called Manifestation Babe, and it's all about manifesting money. Like, you have to visualize that you have lots and lots of money. And if you manifest hard enough, then you'll magically get money one way or another. I think there's some truth in this because it's like a law of attraction thing. It's like, okay, if you start acting in a way that you have a lot of money and you start having a positive mindset, I think there's a lot of truth in having a positive mindset. But it's like a rule of the group that you can't be sort of scientific about it. You can't be like, okay, well, if I'm going to make lots of money, I'd better like put some money in a savings account or sell my car. Or no, you have to, everything's about positive thinking. And I think this is exactly kind of the suspension of disbelief. Like, you want people to join with your vibe and join with your culture. And what you're kind of doing is getting them to suspend their disbelief. I think personally, I think that's kind of black hat. I think it's kind of like peer pressure. Like, you're not allowed to sort of criticize or question things because you'll get kicked out of the group. So I think that's kind of black hat. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of value in getting people to share that belief and to say, okay, this is the way this group thinks. This is what we all do together. I mean, it works for religion. You get people who have a shared belief and they accomplish things. They build their church, they elect a pastor, they do whatever they're going to do. They sing songs, everyone has a good time. So by finding shared beliefs and building them, you actually create a very strong community. However, there are some ethical questions about how far you go with those shared beliefs and when you like start basically becoming like a cult leader. So I don't know. It's something to think about and something to consider when you are building your group. The last thing I put on here is, how do you create buy-in? And I think this is the other thing about a culture, which kind of goes with suspension of disbelief. How do you get people to buy into your culture? What will drive people to say, okay, I like this. This is fun. I want in on this. And it could be like, okay, we're all going to wear red hats and we're going to have a really fun time. Okay, that sounds fun. I'll do it for fun. It could be, join in, wear a red hat and you'll get paid, or wear a red hat and everyone will clap. And like, it's kind of, I don't know, it could be like a gang initiation. Like, why is everyone wearing a red hat? Well, the reward is this. So how do you create buy-in? And this is important no matter what kind of group you're building. Like, what is it that drives people to join in with your culture? So what I'm saying with this slide, with this whole concept of community culture, I'm not saying you should do this or this is the right thing to do. I'm saying that every group culture is going to be different. And ultimately, if you create the group and you set the rules, it's up to you. These are things you want to think about. Like, what kind of group do you want? How do you want people to act towards you? Do you want to be the sole authority? Do you want to have lots of authorities and lots of opinions? Do you want sort of equality in the group? Do you want, like, how do you want your group to go? But really, what are the shared beliefs? I think that's such a powerful one. What do you want people in your group to believe, feel, and how do you want them to act to each other? There's no right or wrong answers. These are just key things to think about. If you're interested in these ideas like alternate reality, creating culture, another direction to look is world building. And world building is a really popular concept in fiction writing especially, and in video games. So I remember going to a talk at Comic-Con about Fallout, and it was before the current Fallout game. This was like back, I think this may have been the Fallout New Vegas game. And they showed the Bible, they called it like the Bible of all the information that they knew about the Fallout world. And it had things about like what people eat and drink, what the currency is, what the sort of political status is, who the different gangs and the different groups are in the world. Like, all of these things were in this big Bible about the world. And I think just looking at what goes into world building can be really powerful when you're thinking about how you put together the culture of a group. And especially if you're an artist, a musician, a writer, and you're trying to put together a community around those, thinking about world building can be very powerful. And I found some great links here that you might enjoy. Writer's Edit has a great article. They talk about 3 different types of worlds. They say you can have imaginary worlds, where you construct an entirely fictional universe. And imagine if you did this with your brand or with your product. Like, what if you created an imaginary world, or like for your makeup or for your lipsticks or for your candy? Like, you have space candy, and like maybe the candy comes from different planets. What planet do each of your audience identify with? Like, think about all those quizzes and things like that. Maybe you could do a quiz for your audience that's like, which planet should you live on? And then when they fill that out, it tells them which candy they should buy or which makeup they should buy. So you've got imaginary worlds that's completely fictional universes. There's alternate reality, which we talked about when we talked about I Love Bees. Alternate reality is reimagining our world with just certain details that are changed. There's also actual locations, bringing the real places in the world into stories. So I'm not going to like stick with this too long and go into too much depth with this, but I think these are really powerful concepts to think about. If your product is in any way arty, and in fact, even if it's boring like Autodesk, can you create something more interesting around it? Can you create context? Like, I think about things like music. When you sell a CD, if you're a band and you sell a CD, people think that what you're buying is just literally music. You're just buying music tracks. But my feeling with music that I'm obsessed with and that I love is that I get obsessed with the whole world around the music. And I think people who get obsessed with musicals, this is part of it. Like, it's not just about the music itself. It's about the context of the music, which is the musical, the theatre. But I think also, like, just for regular bands, putting more context, like the album artwork, the pictures on the artwork, the interviews with the band. That's why you like listening to interviews with band members that you like, because you learn this backstory. You get like an idea, you get a vision into the world that they exist in, and they write their music in. And I think this concept of world building has a much, much bigger range and scope than literally just writing out a world. Like, think about books, for example. I know there are some authors taking this class and who are looking at how to market their books. Well, can you expand the world of the book? Can you maybe pick out, and I have a friend who used to write fantasy books, and she was always doing things like selling maps of the world or creating like character sheets with more information about the characters that wasn't in the book. And the cool thing was she could use these as rewards on Patreon. Like, okay, donate this much to my book and I'll give you a character sheet about your favorite character, or a drawing of a favorite place in the book, or a song that was playing in the tavern in the book. Like, you can really find these elements of your product, of your art, of your music, of your book, and put them into a different context. So I put these links in here. For some of you, it may be like, what? I don't want to get involved with this. This is too much. But if this kind of fascinates you and you're interested, then you might want to check out these links down at the bottom to go a little bit deeper into world building. So we talked about building culture in a group. We talked about how you get a group together to sort of share beliefs and interact with each other. And we've also been talking about gamification and elements of gamification. Well, I thought it'd be interesting to just briefly talk about this diagram that a guy called Richard Bartle created. And I've been interested in Richard Bartle for a while. He started out with text gaming. So back in the day when video games were more about just playing text games online, like mudding, a lot of these games are called MUDs, multi-user dungeon. And what they were kind of like adventure games, but with multiple people in them playing games together. So you could interact, you could walk around the game by doing go west, go north, go south, but you met other players, so you could like kill them or talk to them or collaborate with them to fight a dragon, and you had all this interaction. Well, he analysed the different ways people play these games, and he said you need a balance of the different types of people to make the game fun. And he broke it down into 4 types of people: killers, achievers, socializers, and explorers. And the way he came up with these distinctions was that he used this axis of whether people act or interact, and whether they're acting or interacting on players or the world. So people who act on other players tend to be killers. They're like, I will do something to you, I will kill you. They are people doing something to players. People who act on the world are achievers. So they're people like who are like, okay, I'm going to go and dig for gold in this world, or I'm going to go and collect things from the world. These are people who are acting on the world and trying to take something from it. Now, the people who interact, if they interact with players, they tend to be socializers. They want to chat, they want to hang out, they just want to like interact with other players. If they interact with the world, these are explorers. They're people that just go out and say, wow, I want to see what the world's about. Let me go and figure things out and try things out. He also took it a little bit further by adding an explicit-implicit axis. And with this, what he did was he divided each of these 4 types into 2 more types. So he said with explorers, for example, if they're explicit about their exploring, that is, they decide what they are going to do, then they're scientists. They're like, okay, let's see what happens if I do this with the world. Ah, that was interesting. Okay, I can try that again. I kind of see the explicit-implicit thing being more about whether you make a rational decision to do something or whether you're just doing it. So like an explorer, someone who makes a decision to try things in the world explicitly, is a scientist, whereas someone who's just trying stuff randomly to see what happens is more of a hacker. So that was kind of another element he added to this. But I think what is cool is that you can look at who is playing your games, look at who your audience are and what drives them, what core drives. And if we take this back to the Octalysis and the core drives, like what kind of drives do your audience have? Like the reason I included this, the player types, is that I feel it's a reminder that all people are not the same. You will attract different people to your group. And probably what you don't want in your group is the killers. You don't want people who are just going to act on other players. The politicians, the griefers, the trolls, you don't want those people in your group. But the other people, there may be room for all of those. The socializers, people who are just there to chat and hang out and be friends or network. The explorers, people who want to learn and try things out. The achievers, people who want like the points and the rewards. Like there's room for all these people in your group. So you can look at this and think about maybe your buyer avatar as well, like your potential audience. What kind of drives do they have? What are their thoughts? So I know this has been a long class. There's a lot of theory in it. There's a lot of abstract work. My hope is that you'll be watching it. You'll be thinking of ideas. You'll be like, oh, I can use this in this marketing campaign, or I can use this in this product, or I can use this in my group. So I hope it gives you a lot of ideas. I know it's more abstract. There's less walkthrough, but I did want to give you some examples here. So my thought was, if I had a product that was called a heartbreak hamper, it would be a subscription box. There will be things in there that help you get over a heartbreak. And I got this idea because I was hanging out in various Facebook groups, and it seemed to keep coming up. People were like, how do I deal with a breakup? What can I do to get me through this breakup? It's awful. I thought about this, like, okay, there's obviously a big demand. A lot of people have gone through a breakup, finding it very hard to deal with that. How can you gamify that process? How can you make that a better thing? How can you make that better for people that are going through it? And I also thought about the divorce coach that I was looking at when we talked about signature programs. There was a lady who guides people through their divorce, and she has breakup retreats. Now, all of these things really got me thinking, and I thought, well, one thing that would be cool would be to do a subscription box for people who have gone through a breakup. So each month they get maybe candy, and I think especially for women, my target audience was really women. So I thought maybe it would be nice to get maybe an ice cream gift card, maybe a movie. You could get a DVD with a movie on it that would make you feel better. Maybe candy, maybe a teddy bear. Like you could put these things in a subscription box. And the cool thing is you could actually interact with your audience. And when they start feeling better, maybe you could upgrade them to a go out on the town and party subscription box, or a hey, you found a new man, make yourself look glamorous box. Like there are all these, you could take this in different steps and sort of follow your audience's journey as they deal with their heartbreak. What I thought I would do is put just a list of ideas of things you could do to gamify this process. So if you're selling heartbreak hampers, so let's imagine we're the business owner. We have these heartbreak hampers, which are subscription boxes that we're trying to sell, but also perhaps we are establishing ourselves as a brand that deals with heartbreak and that helps people resolve their heartbreaks. What else can we do? Well, we can build a community that has support, so people can support each other as they take the steps through their heartbreak. So you could add gamification elements to that group. Like I said, maybe you could have challenges like points for each getting over it action. So people can come to the group and say, yeah, well, I went out to a bar on my own tonight. Great, you get 5 points. And then you could have a community over it leaderboard. So you can be like, okay, these people in the group are getting over it the best. They've been out and they've done these things, and oh, I bought a new dress, 5 points. Great, done. And you can put this on a website. Like there's a lot of places you could put it. You could put it in the group and just keep posting updates to the leaderboard in the group. So you could add this gamification element. You could also create a game. You could literally create an app or a game where you have a hero quest, the heartbreak hero quest, and the other characters are heartbroken, and maybe you have to give them gifts, or maybe you do something for them that helps them get over their heartbreak. You could have a role play room, and this could be something that people could do online. Like maybe each week you do a Skype call and you do let's practice how to get over our heartbreak, and you could have practice what you say if he phones you up, and people could do that on Skype and watch each other and support each other. Maybe you could do reward points. So like for each thing people do to get over their heartbreak, you give them rewards that count to a discount on your product, or maybe they even become like gift cards for something else. You could do things like make posts with visualization techniques, or even audio posts. Say, all right guys, this is what you got to do today. This is today's challenge. Visualize the breakup as a boss battle. Okay, so what are you going to do to fight that boss? Now you can do this as a visualization, or you could literally create a game like the heartbreak game. What do you do to get over the heartbreak? How do you defeat the breakup boss? Maybe you throw flowers back at him. You can team up with stores or brands to make real life rewards. So you could actually partner. If you develop a fun game along these lines, you could actually go and partner with like Sephora or like Victoria's Secret and say, hey, I've got this game that we've got going. Can we have some kind of reward? Can we work with you guys? Like, this gives you some leverage in the real world as well. If you create a game and an audience and a community like this, you could find partnerships. Or perhaps maybe not Sephora or Victoria's Secret, but maybe with smaller companies, you could absolutely find some partnerships. The other cool thing about this is it's super newsworthy. Like, if you create a game, people love hearing about games. They love talking about games. So if you make a game called Heartbreak Heroes and you sell your heartbreak hampers, newspapers may not give you any attention for your actual hampers at first. But if you have a game that's like, how do you get over heartbreak? That becomes newsworthy, and maybe you'll get in your local newspaper, on a radio station, and indirectly that will bring people to your hampers, and hopefully you will sell more hampers. Games can be simple or complex. It can literally be like small reward points or badges. So like if you're in your Facebook group, the simplest thing you can do is be like, you can give people like a title. So you can say, I joined the heartbreak group, I'm now an official heartbreaker, or I'm an official heartbreak hero. Like, just giving people that name and allowing themselves to call themselves that, that's a game element. In my group, I'm like, hello, treasure hunters. I always call people treasure hunters. It's an element of gamification. So it can be as simple as that, or it can be a big complicated thing. You can deliver the rules in Facebook posts, you can send them out via email or messenger, you can put them in a book, you can even turn it into an app or a video game. There are a lot of ways of delivering a game. As I say, you can start as simple as you like with just giving people a name if they're part of your game, or you can turn this into a huge alternate reality game that sort of turns into real life meetups or board games or card games or anything else. Like, you can take this to whatever level you want. So games, super powerful. Okay, I think we talked a lot about gamification. I think we've gone over a whole bunch of concepts. What I want you to know is there is not one right way to do gamification. There's no rights or wrongs. I'm not telling you to go and like create some huge complicated game. I'm saying you can do that if you want. It will probably be an awesome thing that will get a lot of attention. But you can just use these elements individually. And hopefully, what I hope you get from this class is that you get an understanding of the tools that are available to you. They're like psychological tools, they're marketing tools, they're game tools, and I hope you kind of see the parallels between games and marketing and buy-in from your audience, like how you get your audience to enjoy your brand and really interact with your brand. So I hope that came across. I would love to talk to you guys about this in the group and sort of dig into it in more detail, because I think it's a fascinating, I love the whole concept of gamification. I think you can go forever with it because there's so much to it. If you really enjoyed this, go and check out Youkai Chow's blog because he has so much in there. He's got podcasts, he's got an Udemy course, he has all this stuff. My whole feeling with that guy is I wish I'd come up with this because I think it's so cool what he's done. But anyway, there we go. So your homework today, browse the game mechanics in the Formulizer in Tangent. So just go and take a look in Tangent, go to the Formulizer and just browse through these game mechanics. Think how you could apply these to different events in your life transitions. So just browse around these and figure out something that you think's kind of interesting. And your homework is to pick 2 or 3 mechanics. So it could be like estimating or guessing, like a guessing game. It could be captioning things. It could be a racing game. And think about how you would apply those to your particular niche. So think about what your niche is, what you stand for, what your brand is. How can you gamify that? What game elements could you apply to that? And that's your homework. Just write some notes on that, 2 or 3 mechanics and how they apply to your niche. All right, I hope you enjoyed this class. I know it's a little out there. I hope you can think about it and have an open mind with it and have fun with it, because This is the kind of thing that really has the power to make your brand something very unique and very, very interesting, shareable and newsworthy. So have a lot of fun with gamification.